We are looking at question 2 in our Canvas quiz, focusing on correlations, descriptive statistics. If you're doing this along with me in VMware, make sure that you've opened up VMware, and then from within VMware, you've clicked on a browser icon to open up that browser inside of VMware. And using that browser, you have navigated to Miracosta's website, selected Canvas, and then navigated into our course and to this quiz. And that's where we'll go ahead and pick up. Now, you're watching this video along with me, so excellent. We're going to do this activity together. But I also want to let you know that you can refer to the SPSS Now reference guide. And this guide goes over what you did in the tutorial and game, so that can be helpful to have available. And what's really nice is, again, you can kind of read through it, so it's a different format than just watching a video. And at the very top of it, there's an option if you want to go ahead and read it in, for example, Spanish or any other language that Google supports. So that can be kind of cool to see. Another thing that I want to point out is that on the Play to Learn site for this activity, when you did it as a tutorial game, there's also step-by-step slides. So this is kind of neat because you can go through each of the slides as they appeared on the tutorial, and you have a lot of control just jumping from one slide to the next. So you have this video, you have the book, and you have these slides, all different ways to help you with our current activity using the actual SPSS. Okay, so we're in VMware, we're set up. Let's take a look at what question 2 asks us to do. So we're going to go ahead and open up a brand new SPSS file. We're going to define two variables, happiness and stress, both of them as scale variables. And then we're asked to go ahead and calculate Pearson's R for the set of 20 participants. So the first 17 are those that we've already worked with in the tutorial game. And then 3 more participants have been added to your data set. And it's going to be different for you than what you see here in this video. Everyone will have a different set of scores for those last 3 participants. So let's get started in finding out what is Pearson's R for the relationship between happiness and stress for these 20 participants. We'll start up SPSS. And right now we're in data view, so we'll switch over to variable view. And our 2 variables, we've got happiness as well as stress. And SPSS will go ahead and fill out the rest for us in terms of type with decimals. You can change the decimals from 2 to 0. After all, we are dealing with whole numbers, so I'll leave that up to you. It can make the data look cleaner. I'm going to go to where it says measure and change it to say scale for both variables. These variables are Likert scale variables on a scale of 1 to 7. And it's fairly typical to treat those type of variables as scale. Okay, let's put in our data. For that, we'll go back and look at the actual data set. And I'm going to put my cursor right here next to happiness. I'm going to click down. I'm going to go down. I'm going to slowly go down, scroll a little bit, keep going. And this can be tricky. So I'm going to do it again. Basically, if you scroll, you lose the highlighting. So that I've highlighted all of them. I'm going to right click and choose copy. Maybe you could copy and paste segments at a time or just hand type it in, whichever works best for you. But you want to be able to put these 20 participants in. I'm going to click here on the top left cell, right click and choose paste. And there we go. We're ready to continue. Okay, so the only thing we have to do for question 2 is calculate Pearson's R. So I'm going to go to Analyze, Correlate, Bivariate meaning 2 variables. I'm going to move happiness and stress into the variables window. And that's it. Click OK. And here is our SPS output. The correlation is a negative 0.413. I'll round that to the hundredths place, so I'm going to get a negative 0.41. So go ahead and scroll down, and here record it as negative 0.41. All right, that's it. Question 2 has been answered. On to question 3. question 3 is more involved because this is where we're going to write an actual APA style correlation report, and we're going to evaluate both of the variables, make sure that they're suitable for using Pearson's R. We're going to create and evaluate the scatter plot to make sure it's appropriate to use either Pearson's R or Spearman's rho, and then we'll write up everything as APA style. So step 1, open up our Google Doc sample APA style correlation report. And if you are signed into Google, you'll be able to just make a copy of this document if you want. You can just go to File, Make a Copy. And here I could just say, well, this is for a quiz, right? So I could just type in quiz. There, and done. But let's say you're not signed in. Well, then you could just copy it and paste it into like a Microsoft Word document or whatever word processor you want to use. So now I have a copy of what we used earlier in the tutorial game. You can see that it's based on having 17 participants, and we're going to need to redo this for 20 participants. Okay, so let's start off by analyzing our 2 variables. So we have happiness and stress. We're going to get those descriptive statistics, and we're also going to get the histograms for them as well. Okay, so we go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and we're using the Explore option. I mean, could you use assignment with frequencies? Sure, but for now we're going to use Explore as a whole group. I'm going to move over both variables. And for plots, indicate that I want the histogram, but no box plots. Just don't need it right now, and continue. And OK. So here we go. We have our descriptive statistics and our histograms. So I'm going to right-click on the tables and choose Copy. And then head over to my Word document, or that is my Google document. And I'm going to click on the happiness results, and I'm going to delete it. And the stress results, delete it, because those were for the 17 participants. And right-click and paste it for the 20. Now, you can see that it came in looking kind of messy. And if it does that for you, that's totally fine. Like, you don't have to change anything about it. I'm going to head back and click on again. This time I'm just going to try Control C, see if that makes a difference. And Control V. It didn't. Paste. No, so for myself, as I'm trying this, I'm not getting the actual tables, but I'm just going to play with it. I'm going to right click, say Copy as Image, see if that makes a difference. So for over here, highlight this stuff and just clear it. Right click, paste. Hey, there it worked. So I'm not going to be concerned if you just give me the text, because you can see it's a little temperamental. And if you're able to get the tables, that's great. In an actual correlation report, typically you're not going to include the SPSS tables. You're doing that just as part of the assignment. So no worries about it necessarily looking all beautiful. So you got the tables in. We have them in for our 20 participants. So now on to do likewise for the histograms. So I'm going to delete it for both of our variables. Back in my SPS output, I'm going to right click on the histogram for happiness, copy as image, and then in here, in the Google Doc, paste it. It didn't seem to have recorded the image, so I'm going to go back. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to make sure it's really highlighted. Make sure I truly selected it. Then right click and choose copy. If it would continue to give me grief, I'd probably just do a screen copy, a screenshot, but I think it'll work this time. Here we go. So right click, paste. Yeah, there we go. So we got the happiness in there. And likewise, the one for stress. And just make sure it's really selected. Then right click, copy. Go a bit below it. I just press the right arrow and enter a few times because it wasn't like letting go, if you will, and paste. Okay, so now we've got our histograms. Yay, got our histograms. We got our tables. Let's take a look at those normality tests. So for happiness, we're going to update. This was for when there was 17 participants, so now we're going to do it for 20. So for happiness, what is our mean and median? And the mean is 4.90. I'll go to the hundreds place. And the median is 5.00. Okay. So at 4.90, 5.00, they're roughly equivalent, so it passed. Now let's take a look at the skewness statistic. The skewness statistic is a negative 0.363, and the standard error of skewness is 5.12. Okay, so here it's recorded, and I'm just going to go to the thousands place after all. Okay, so absolute value of skewness. So I'm going to take that negative 0.363, and it'll be a positive 0.363. And we need to double the standard error of skewness. So it's 0.512. If we double it, it's going to be 1.024. With our calculator, here's 0.512 times 2. There we go, 1.024. Was the absolute value of skewness less than 2 times the standard error of skewness? Well, 0.363 is less than 1.024, so it passed. And then last, we take a look at the histogram. Here looks fairly normal. We got this, odd one a little bit out here, but it's not an outlier, and it's definitely not looking heavily skewed. So it would go ahead and it would pass that third test as well. So it passed 3 out of 3. Next, we'll do the same thing for the variable stress. So with stress, we need to find out what was the mean and standard deviation. So for our 20 participants, the mean was 6.100, and the median is 6.000. Those two are fairly similar. So mean was similar to median, it passed. Now let's look at the second test of normality. We'll find out what the skewness is and the standard error of skewness for our stress variable. The skewness is a negative 0.152, and the standard error skewness is 0.512. Okay, so we've gone ahead and recorded that. The absolute value of skewness, so we look at our skewness and we ignore the sign. So we're just going to get a positive then 0.152. And then we need to double our standard error of skewness. We're still working with 0.512, so when we double it, it's going to be 1.024, just like it was for our variable happiness. Is the absolute value of skewness 0.152 less than 2 times the standard error of skewness, which was 1.024? Yes. So it passed. So it's already passed 2 out of the 3 tests, so it's good. But if we take a look at the histogram, we're like, yep, for stress it also definitely doesn't look like it's heavily skewed. So we're good. So we can consider both the variable happiness and the variable stress to be fairly normal. Next step is to go ahead and take our existing scatter plot for the variables happiness and stress and replace it, because this is for 17 participants and we need one for 20 participants. So I'll go ahead and delete it, and we'll head over to SPSS. We'll go to Graphs, Chart Builder. Our variable is already defined as scale, so we're good. Here we go. We're going to go with the scatter dot, and from that we will choose the scatter plot option. So I'm just dragging and dropping it into the gallery area. And we're going to be using stress level to predict happiness. So stress will go onto the x-axis, and happiness will go onto the y-axis. And what you're shown here is not at all connected with your actual data. It's just says here chart preview uses example data. And I thought that was initially like a thumbnail of what my data would look like, but no, it just sort of say it's a scatter plot. All right, now the other thing is that I want to make sure everything shows up well. So I'm going to click where we have the happiness variable. Good. I was kind of fumbling around for it, but here we go. It's on the x-axis. No, y-axis. I want y-axis. Here we go. There you go. So happiness is on the y-axis, so I clicked y-axis here. I've got happiness, and I'm going to have it start at, I think in my case, I'm going to start it at 2 because we had a happiness value that went all the way down to 3. I just want to make sure that I can easily see all my dots in my scatter plot. As long as you set it to start at 3, you're fine. I just make it a little bit better. Okay, click OK. And yeah, see, remember in our data set with 20 participants, happiness, instead of just being 4, 5, and 6, went all the way down to 3. So that's why I had started 2, so I didn't get any of these dots right on the x-axis. Okay, so we've got here the scatter plot. Awesome. And we need to add the best fitting line to it. So to get the best fitting line, I'm going to go ahead and just double click on it. Here is my chart editor. I'm going to go to the Elements drop-down menu and choose Fit Line at Total. So it's done. At this point, there is the best fitting line. But I don't have very many dots, and as much as I really like this linear regression equation, it's just not in the right spot. I can't like drag it anywhere. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and remove it. And your properties window is going to look different than mine. But along the bottom, somewhere it's going to say attach line, attach label to line. And that's what we want to uncheck, where it says attach label to line. And then I'll go ahead and click apply and close. And now we've removed the linear regression equation, which isn't a bad thing. It's just there were so few dots, I want to make sure that all of them show up. And then for my chart editor, I'll go ahead and close it. So we've got the scatter plot now. So I'm clicking it to make just once to make sure it's highlighted. By highlight, I mean that the handle is around the edge. I click on it, see how they appear. Now I'm going to right click, and I'm just going to say copy as image. And I'm going to put this into the Google Doc. So here's a Google Doc. And again, you could be doing this in Microsoft Word. I'm going to right click, paste, and it didn't work. Control Z will undo it. Let's try it again. I think you have to have a sense of humor when you do this. All right, try it again. I'm just going to say copy. And here we go. Paste. Yay, it worked this time. So again, if it just wasn't working for me, I would do like a screenshot and then copy and paste the screenshot in. So we've got the scatter plot here. We're almost done. Now it's just writing up the results APA style. So what was our correlation? Oh, and by the way, what we haven't done yet, and it's good, we saved it for last, was to actually do the correlation, because unlike question 2, which said go do a Pearson's R, here we're actually doing the correlation report, which means we shouldn't do Pearson's R unless it's appropriate. But we know it's okay to do. Why? Both variables are scale. We define them that way. Both variables can be considered fairly normal. We went ahead and we did the normality tests, and both variables passed all 3, and they only needed to just pass 2. So it can be considered fairly normal. And neither of them have an outlier. An outlier is a score that's like way out there, far away from everybody else, and that wasn't the case either. So they are both excellent, and we can do Pearson's R. So we're going to replace what we currently have for the 17 participants and instead do it for the 20. Now, we already did this for question 2, but let's just go back and get more practice with this, right? So analyze, correlate, bivariate, and see our 2 variables are already here. They're ready and waiting for us. We're going with Pearson's R. I'm just going to click Spearman's Rho just to look at it, but we're not going to need it. Say OK. So Pearson's R, it's again that negative 0.413, just as we saw before. And Spearman's Rho, a negative 0.447. So they're fairly similar, but Pearson's R is going to be the better way to go since we fulfilled all the requirements. So I'm going to click on it, and when I clicked on it, there's like this little red arrow appearing to the left of it. Maybe that's helpful. Right click, copy as image. Here's our tables. I'm going to come in here, right click, paste. It worked. Okay, so now let's go and update our APA style report. So negative 0.41. We're rounding to the hundredths place, so negative 0.41. We've done a lot. So negative 0.41, and it's going to be different for every student. Okay, now we need to get in our descriptive statistics for happiness. When we had only 17 people, this is what we had. Let's find out what it is. Now we have 20. Okay, so for happiness, the mean 4.90 and the standard deviation 0.85. Okay, so for happiness, we got that information into our write-up. It's a large italicized M for the mean, which is appropriate for reporting our sample. And we're using the lowercase italicized s, and that's telling our reader that the standard deviation was calculated as an estimate where you have n-1 in the denominator. And just to let you know, that's how SPSS always calculates the standard deviation. So if you're just grabbing it from SPSS, it's an estimated population standard deviation with n-1 in the denominator. So that's totally fine. You just have to report it correctly, and that means with the lowercase italicized s. All right, let's do likewise for our variable stress. The mean there is 6.10, and the standard deviation would be 0.72. I'm rounding up because in the thousands place there is an 8, which is 5 or larger. So this becomes a 0.72. All right, and important, is it still a moderate negative correlation? Well, it's negative, right? Pearson's R is a negative 0.41, and it's moderate. And we know that it's moderate because the value is larger than or equal to, if you take the absolute value of the negative 0.41. So if we take the absolute value, we just think of this 0.41. That is 0.3 and greater, but not quite as high as 0.7. So if it had been the absolute value between 0 and just under 0.3, we call it weak. If it's 0.7 and above, we call it strong. And if it's in the middle, we call it moderate. And be aware of those cutoffs I just shared. They may be different from class to class and discipline to discipline. So always want to check with the people that you're working with. What is it like for where you're working at? But we consider this then a moderate negative correlation between happiness and then open parentheses and upper case italicized m equal to 4.90, comma, a lowercase italicized s equal to 0.85, close parentheses, and stress, open parentheses, uppercase italicized m equal to 6.10, comma, lowercase italicized s equal to 0.72, close parentheses, was observed among 17 behavioral statistics students surveyed spring 2023, comma, italicized lowercase r equal to negative 0.41, period. All right, that's it. So now at this point, you'll want to go ahead and submit it. If you're using Google Docs, you could go to File and then download it as a PDF and then upload it to Canvas. Take care.